blow your mind tonight. I'm so hyped, but it's no hype. From this height, it's direct hits on sight. I'm your type, lend me your ears to show you that there's something in me. I'm not giving up, I'm standing right here, holding these days hostage. And I'll make this my year. We turning fear into love, and the love's in the air. I love doing this cause nothing compares. Nothing can share that same type of feeling when you feeling them flares. They can't catch it, it's havoc. I rip to a tear, switch a scenario. My stereos, I leave them impaired. Variables start to change and they're all in my range. I just gotta grab it, it's all mathematics. Every step is drastic, I make it fantastic. I'm trying to take your breath away. Asthmatic.
This is live through the stereo. Go and let it blow, blow through the stereo. I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo, stereo. This is live through the stereo. Go and let it blow, blow through the stereo. I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo, stereo.
Yeah, just nod your head with it, so explicit and vivid. Every image is intricate, intimate. I put my all into it, no scrimmage and no rules. I'm a pro tool, hear my heartbeat, beat into the vocals. I'm so loco, lost my mind, oh no. It's ponderoso, dope, so no overdose, cause it's dope, yo. Man, this is house grown, mixed with some milestones. So I let the style flow down like the Dow Jones, bringing it with some foul tones, letting the crowd know we getting loud, so it's eardrum rudiments. Yeah, we bring it rude again. Move, little hooligan. Music for tuning in. Full time to the 10. I'm on my clock like I told you. I'm doing
gobble, gobble, everyone, and welcome back to the Anti-Media Radio. I hope you had some kind of time over the weekend celebrating what could be the most ironically horrific holiday in the history of mankind. But hey, look, I'm not going to cast aspersions. It's a good time to get together. It's a good time for everyone to express love with the people that they care about, and that's an important thing. You know, this was a particularly difficult time, and I'm Jake Anderson, by the way. I'm going to be hosting tonight in the stead of the great Nick Burnaby, who is on vacation, and it's a well-deserved vacation as well. You know, I don't mind Thanksgiving, mostly because I like to eat, but I don't like hypocrisy. And the hypocrisy of what goes on every year on Thanksgiving is already bad enough, with kind of just celebrating the eternal occupation of another people's land. Then you add on top of that the fact that we slaughter, a billion turkeys on top of it. You know, I don't like to throw stones at people that eat meat. I eat meat sometimes. I try to be more vegetarian. I certainly ate meat over the weekend. I don't feel too bad about it, though. But to add to that, you have what we have going on at Standing Rock, which is basically another tragedy going on that couldn't have worse timing in terms of overlapping with Thanksgiving, in terms of the irony of it. But there's so much going on in the news, and I got behind. I think everyone got behind. It's difficult to keep up with everything that's going on. I'm joined by my co-host and longtime anti-media veteran, DB. DB, how you doing, man?
Not too bad. I mean, what is there to really say? Every day is a new debacle, dude. It's like we're desensitized at this point, and you know, the main thing we should harp on, especially now that, well, Nick's on hiatus for a long time. We know he's in Costa Rica, so he's going to be gone for what, like 2 weeks?
Dropped the beans. You dropped the beans.
Yeah.
I was going to keep the country out of it.
Oh, well, that's all right. That's all right. It's not like anyone's tracking him there, right?
Yeah,
but
it's not like the government tracks people down or anything like that.
No, not at all. I'm surprised he got there, to be honest. But anyway, you know, I think we should apply pressure to things that we ordinarily wouldn't touch, and it can kind of be a blend of what we usually do Friday or whatever. I mean, however you want to play it, but I mean, to me, the main thing that we got to keep the gas on is the Pizzagate thing, because new revelations keep coming out. More, you know, they thought they had this impenetrable Tor-based system where they could be completely anonymous, they could use Bitcoin, and they could use layers of protection. and hire the best people in the world to cover their tracks. And what they're finding, to their dismay, is that I don't care how good you are, you're not going to defeat thousands upon thousands of people that sit on the internet all day and just look and observe and try to find things. And it's not Anonymous that's going to end up taking anything down. It's going to be the Redditors and the Facebookers and everybody else that's basically on 4chan, those kind of things, those forums. That's what's really making a dent right now, because the media can't touch it, because a lot of the people that are in the media are probably involved.
Right. No, man, I'm down to talk about whatever you want to talk about. I know that Nick normally doesn't like to go into that side of it, but hey, I'm not Nick. I'm my own man. And this is my journey, DB. And yeah, no, I want to talk about that, and it actually loops into something that I wanted to talk about. I wrote an article about, but it hasn't been posted yet, so now I have to go into my Google Drive. But it has to do with, did you hear about Milo? It was Milo coming out and making a video about reasons he thinks that Julian Assange is dead, which is really not funny to me. I don't think he's kidding, but I don't know. It seemed a pretty loosely put together list of coincidences, and I'll tell you what I think could really be going on. And I'll probably wait to talk about this more on oh, this is Wednesday. I'll probably wait to talk more about this on Monday after the article goes live. But I think what's happening here is, and for those of you who don't know, basically, WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange has been incognito for a while. There's been a lot of really sketchy things going on. People he knows dying, prosecutors showing up, his internet being taken down, and so there's a lot of people that think that not only is he dead, but that WikiLeaks has been compromised. Now, I would posit, my theory is that the alt-right and Milo and Alex Jones and Trump, for that matter, have a lot to gain from people thinking that WikiLeaks has been compromised. Because if WikiLeaks has been compromised, that means that the new revelations that will be coming out about Trump, they can have an excuse and say that those have been tarnished, that they're not real. They'll do the same thing that the Hillary Clinton camp did. Our government, this government, no matter who's in charge, I don't care if Donald Duck is in charge, they will never be transparent. They will never tell you what's really going on. And that's why WikiLeaks are true heroes, and that's why I hope that Julian Assange is not Time's Man of the Year. That would be an insult to the man. Please do not put him on your cover, Time magazine.
Yeah, they'll probably give him a Nobel Peace Prize soon, right?
Well, that would... Yeah.
Dude, you know, what was the guy that... Some guy said he came out and he went to dinner with Julian, and no pictures, no proof of life. Craig Murray. Okay, yeah, so... Yeah, anyway, he's an ex-MI6, I guess, and supposedly he said he had dinner with Julian in the inside of the asylum. Now, yeah, now there's I guess a UN ruling has come out saying he basically can't be held there any longer under international law,
right? And
he should be protected, and he's a free man. The problem is he's probably long gone. He was probably taken to a CIA rendition site, and they probably drilled him for everything he had, and then who knows where he is now. He's probably in a deep, dark hole, because I doubt they would get rid of him. He's just too valuable of a piece. And I'm sure they are compromised, you know. There was things that Julian did specifically for over a decade, like never misspelling a single word on a tweet. There's already now been numerous misspellings. So, you know, those are just small things. And I think it's very obvious that they did go in, they did snag him. Now, he had a dead man switch and it didn't go off. And I think what happened was...
his thermonuclear device.
Well, whatever it was, it never went off. And I believe that NSA was able to reverse engineer his own, probably, infrastructure over the 5 years he was stuck in there. So...
God damn it.
You know, I'm sure they were able to get through to him, and once they had to go on being able to stop whatever he had planned, they just took him, and there was nothing you could do about it. Now the damage has been done. Who does he work for in reality? No one knows. No one may ever know.
Well, he'll be tortured into working for the government. I mean, that's
right.
Julian Assange could very well be in the most ghastly of human hells imaginable right now, and this is not overstatement. This is not conspiracy.
No,
if they infiltrated him, they're going to be torturing him until he helps them. What they want to use him to make sure that WikiLeaks never happens again. They want to use him to make sure there are no future Julian.
And I think it's far too late. And fortunately, I think for humanity, there's probably already some embedded AI type stuff going on that's just waiting and watching. I know we've read a lot about white hat activity, and Cory Doctorow's, of course, he's kind of like the soft sell for what is kind of probably going on underground to the next generation, to the teens, because we need them really bad.
I love Cory Doctorow.
Yeah, he's like the real Mr. Robot, like the real hope for the world. Yeah,
dude, he was at Burning Man last time I went, and he showed up in like this one-piece suit and wrote about how he's trying to take down the what's the big copyright law that protects the movies?
SIPA or
no the
the MPAA.
Yeah, that. He's basically trying to figure out a way to take that down. But that dude he's smart because he's able to work from the inside and do dangerous stuff, but he's not risking his life and those around him like Julian Assange is. I mean, Julian Assange is, exponentially a bigger hero in my opinion. But I mean, dude, this is sick. This is sick that we have to sit here and say goodbye to we have to sit here and imagine our heroes being tortured to death because they're trying to tell the truth.
Yeah, it's seriously, it's very strange what's going on. If Trump's actually allowed to be inaugurated and he does something interesting like pardon Snowden, which bridges a gap with Putin, which, here's what I think happened, and people may differ with me, but I think for the U.S., specifically, there's always been, one faction that kind of ran things for, the better part of, the 1770s up until the 1910s, and that was the military, and we were completely a military country. A lot of people don't know that Teddy Roosevelt was the inceptor of what was known as gunboat diplomacy, where a lot of people don't even know this, but we had, because of the Civil War, about 25 years later, we had steam-driven, iron-sided, partially submerged battleships that nobody in the world could conceivably match. The British Empire ran for their lives. Let's put it that way. The Civil War unleashed a monster that didn't stop until this day, and it's still going. And essentially what they were able to do with that modus operandi is they were able to make manifest destiny worldwide, and they began to institute Pax Americana. The first empire that fell was the Barbary Coast. People can look them up. They fell to a hail of cannon fire coming from iron ships that they couldn't even hope to do anything to with sailboats, and they were pirates and they were taken out. And that was the first of many empires we crushed, including Spain, taking basically all of their colonies and everything that wasn't nailed down. And they ran things forever until, I guess, finally after enough maneuvering, and this guy Smedley Butler kind of made sure that the military didn't lose total control, but the bankers came in and they basically bought the government, essentially.
Ghastly bankers.
Everybody knows Standard Oil, the company that controlled the world and bought the government, and then to kind of sell the government still being legitimate, the government broke up Standard Oil, and Standard Oil still runs the government. They just run it from 50 corporations instead of one. And, essentially what I think is happening with Trump, if it's allowed to go through, and if it's not, they'll be hell to pay, trust me. But if it's allowed to go through, I think what happened was the bankers since, maybe 1910 or 11, since they got us off the standard and then collapsed the economy for the first time, they're not in control anymore. The military took it back, and I have to wonder why. I have to think somewhere in some underground base, there's some AI system that basically took the banking system over and shut those guys down. And there's like no way they can bribe or blackmail the military anymore. They're just powerless.
Wouldn't surprise me. I mean, if you look at the timeline set out by a lot of the futurists, particularly Ray Kurzweil, it's pretty much going exactly according to schedule. In fact, we may be a little bit ahead. I mean, Kurzweil basically thinks the singularity is going to happen in 2038. And at this point, I mean, it could be sooner than that. The explosion, some people listening might understand what's about to happen in the next 3 years. But basically, there is about to be an explosion in virtual reality and augmented reality combined to make something called mixed reality that is going to so completely transform our world that it's going to be... Imagine the transition from pre-internet and cell phones to now, okay? This transition is going to make that look like, I don't know, I don't have a metaphor for it right now, but it is going to be so dramatic that it's going to be mind-boggling. Everything we look at is going to be an interface, through an interface with augmented reality, with every possible modicum of thought being visualized for us in front of us. So, and every gesture we make, they're already investing, a company is investing hundreds of millions of dollars into mapping our gestures so that it's going to be like in Minority Report. Our very gestures are going to be able to summon up this kind of universe, these interfaces. It's the change we're about to see, and this is all going to happen in the next 2 years. I'm not talking about 10 years. I'm not talking about 5 years. This is going to be happening in the next couple of years. Change is in the air, ladies and gentlemen, and we need to be very wary of how this is going to be commercialized and how it's going to be used for surveillance. Because we already know that they're doing everything in their power to document and track every single thing we do. When you start adding in virtual reality to that, I mean, they're literally going to own our lives. They're going to have every moment of our lives documented. They'll be able to bring them up. They will be able to recreate your life. You will be a character in a movie that the government can press a button and bring it up and literally just watch what you're doing. What do you think about that?
If you can't beat them, join them, I guess, right? What are you going to do? I mean, here's the thing, like, something's going to happen here soon where there's going to be a choice we're going to make where we're going to keep following the easy road, which is technology, or we're going to take the left turn, which is the tough one, which is spiritual evolution, which is what I think me and you and maybe the 5% of people that are awake want, which is where we get way past basically needing these things.
Right.
You know, without getting into metaphysics and going down the long, windy road of Nikola Tesla, essentially in between the two spheres of your brain, you have an electromagnetic condenser, aka your third eye. And they do all kinds of things like put fluoride in our water and GMOs in our food and every other sort of thing, including chemtrailing, to decode the natural evolution of this organelle inside of your brain that, were it able to be completely fleshed out and completely evolved, you could manipulate your physical world, aka like Neo, because everything's electromagnetic, right? Like Magneto, like you could control literally anything that could be that had an electron. So you could do things like telekinesis, mind control, mind reading, blah, 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 all those things. And, you know, everybody says, well, what we need to do is essentially have a sunstorm that hits just the right way. And every time what they've said are epochs where there's massive evolutionary shifts. They almost happen like within a 3-month period. And a lot of people say, well, that's when the sun explodes and it overwhelms the... basically the Earth's ability to filter out all the radiation, and a lot of it gets to the surface, even down into the ocean, and the things that survive are changed, like, irrevocably, and sometimes for the better, almost always for the better, because the strongest survive. So I don't know what's happening.
We certainly need an evolution, and you're right. I mean, there's going to be... Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, you know, James Cameron's such an insider that he tried to show us the two paths we had with Avatar. I mean, we can become absolutely in control of the natural world and complete symbiotic balance and have a relationship with everything around us and still be Lord and Master. And we don't need to exploit and destroy. I mean, we could be in perpetual balance if only people would literally like just force the predator psychopath class out. I mean, it's going to come to a point where they're just going to kill everyone else if we don't do away with them first. That's kind of like where this choice is coming down to. I mean, are we going to continue to play the game and let them get us into a World War III scenario where we're all going to perish and they're going to be underground and safe? Or are we going to take them out first? I mean, I don't know what Donald Trump is, but if Donald Trump is the military, then we may see military tribunals the day after he's inaugurated, you know? Like Nuremberg may happen right in front of us, right on the internet, right on the mainstream TV.
And who would be on trial?
Well, the losers, obviously. I mean, there's got to be a reason why there's two branches that, seem to be having a huge split right now. Here's the thing, man. There's a lot of violent, horrible, evil men in the military, but they're necessary. But pedophiles are not necessary. People that murder and rape and, by some accounts, even consume children that are completely innocent, those people are not necessary in the world. And the men that are in the military that are those violent men, they have children, they have families. That's why they're violent. So if they're going to unleash their violence, if we're going to have a wolf class, unleash them on the predator class.
I like that. If we're going to have a wolf class, unleash it on the predator class. Hope someone's writing that down because that's brilliant. I think you're right, though, at least on some of the initial points you were making. And we've talked about this, actually. The one time we met in person, we were touching upon this, which is that there's two different kinds of evolution that I think are about to take place, and actually are both nascent. They're already embryonic here. And one, of course, is the technological singularity, and it's pretty much undeniable that's going to happen at this point. And that's as humans merge with artificial intelligence and nanotechnology, there's going to be a God class. And not all humans are going to be a part of it, but there's going to be a lot of people that just basically have God-like abilities, and they will be able to live lifetime upon lifetime upon lifetime. But I think if they're
technocratic, they're still a slave to a material-based existence, which we know is not. There's no such thing, no matter what, as immortality. Every sentient being will at some point cease to exist in this physical incarnation, one way or another. And whatever's next. I was going to finish with this. The second part of it is, I think, what you're getting to, which is that there is an Earth consciousness, which is what is missing from the world as a whole. And I think this is your point, which is that in order to really evolve as a species, we need both. With technology and with a unified Earth consciousness, what can't we do? Yeah, I mean, essentially that's where it's headed. That's what we want to get it to. I don't know if you do any gaming, Jake, but a lot of games have kind of
I've played a couple Mario Brothers in my life.
Yeah, a lot of the sci-fi kind of games are leading towards something where we're going to have like a mesh of bionic with human, and then also have advanced, electromagnetic / spiritual consciousness type higher powers available, as a best of all worlds, knowing that we're just kind of in this flesh sack with an electrical skeleton. I mean, we're super, super fragile. People die every single day for the dumbest stuff ever because we're so weak in the body. And if we could kind of at least get ourselves to the point where we weren't so fragile in the body, I mean, we would have time to perfect our mental ability, our mental acuity. But you're right. The God class, everything going on right now is because the people that are on the verge of that know they cannot exist if they have to share that power with the masses, or really even if they had to share it with, say, a couple million people. It'd be too many people in the world with that kind of power. So I don't know how they're planning to divvy it up without a global revolt.
Yeah, who knows? Well, I was going to touch upon, I really want our listeners, well, we're all kind of viewing each other at the same time, our remote viewers. I really want our remote viewers to understand kind of where I'm coming from, and perhaps where you're coming from as well, because a lot of people know that there's a lot of really deranged stuff going on, and a lot of people believe in conspiracy theories, but a lot of times the only kind of conspiracy theory you hear about is JFK and the magic bullet, or 9/11 was an inside job, and I think both of those are true. I don't think the magic bullet is true. I think Kennedy was killed by about 20 different groups at once, actually. No, not really. But but there are conspiracies out there that really did happen, and they're shaping the modern world, and I just wanted to run over a couple of them real quick. And DB, I'm sure you'll have insight on these. Now, and I apologize for my hoarse voice. I just got back from a wedding in Las Vegas, which just took the life right out of my body, right out of my soul. But DB, you of course you've heard of the Gulf of Tonkin incident, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, there's the godfather of all false flags right there. So
the Gulf of Tonkin incident. This was the major escalator of U.S. involvement in the Vietnam War. Okay, this was essentially 9/11 for Vietnam. It was right after the Gulf of Tonkin that the United States, right after it happened, Lyndon Johnson drafted the Gulf of Tonkin Resolution, which became his administration's legal justification for military involvement. Okay, the problem is it never happened, and it's actually been acknowledged that it didn't happen. And the government has acknowledged that it didn't happen. So the reason we went to Vietnam, the reason is complete bullshit, and the government has admitted. What were they? Basically, there was a vessel that was firing at something. At first, they said it was firing at a North Vietnamese naval vessel. Okay, so what was the Maddox actually firing at? In 1965, President Johnson said, "For all I know, our Navy was shooting at whales out there." Okay, the NSA's own historian, this ties together with the present, he concluded, the parallels between the faulty intelligence on Tonkin Gulf and manipulated intelligence used to justify the Iraq War make it all the more worthwhile to re-examine the events of August 1964. Okay, so that's number one on a list of 10 conspiracy theories that turned out to be true. They're all very troubling. I recommend you guys look at this. Of course, Project MKUltra is on there. Now, Project MKUltra is another, it was a CIA-run secret mind control experiment that literally went on from the 1950s to 1973. The Unabomber was actually a part of it at one point. That's basically something that has been revealed. Most of the documents can't be found at this point because the CIA director, Richard Helms at the time, pretty much destroyed the vast majority of them, but we know enough that it happened. And in fact, President Bill Clinton actually apologized to the nation, another government apology for, this is what he is apologizing for. The CIA used drugs, electronics, hypnosis, sensory deprivation, verbal and sexual abuse, and torture to conduct experimental behavioral engineering experiments on subjects. The program subcontracted hundreds of these projects to over 80 different institutions, including universities, hospitals, prisons, and pharmaceutical companies. So this is what was happening between the 50s and the late 70s. What the hell do you think's going on now? You don't think this stuff's still going on? I mean, it's almost incomprehensible what we're a part of. COINTELPRO is, of course, another big one, and this was debated for a long time. But, you know, these conspiracy theories, you know, one of these days I'm going to write a book about conspiracy theories because I do think there is a cultural significance to them that is, I think they can be used as tools I don't know. DB, what's your favorite conspiracy theory that people still... First, what's your favorite conspiracy theory that has been completely accepted? And what's your favorite conspiracy theory that is still in dispute?
I don't know, man. I guess the main thing that the main thing that a lot of people don't understand is, for me, always the multifaceted end, and really there was no real end to World War II. It set up everything. It set up the entire information matrix me and you live in, because at that point, the GI generation essentially allowed the government to use wartime power to shred the Constitution apart, and the wartime powers never left because they never actually ended up declaring peace with the Third Reich, which is now considered the Fourth Reich. So I mean, we can go into a whole show about that, but that's what most people don't know. Most people don't know that we didn't actually win World War II. It was a lot more multifaceted than that. And it's still ongoing in a very real way. And they're still actually officially declared at war with an exiled government that was able to escape from Germany prior to Germany being leveled. So that's one thing that a lot of people don't know, and it changes the whole dynamics. That can be actually corroborated when you leave the country and speak to people that have gone through advanced history classes, particularly in Asia. If you go to Japan and you ask an average Japanese person who won World War II, they tell you Japan won World War II. You can ask them that, and they'll tell you exactly how and why and what the spoils of them winning was. And if you look at how we have absolutely no manufacturing economy right now at all, then you understand that they did indeed win that war. Maybe they took 2 A-bombs and lost millions of people and took a whole hell of a lot of punishment, but in the end, they absolutely did gut our economy, and we're pretty screwed right now as a result. Just took a long time. And then the one that I guess is something everybody accepts is that 9/11 is completely different than what we were sold. It's been ripped to shreds, their story. It's really the most important of all false flags and all conspiracy theories, because if it doesn't happen, if, say, Al Gore were in office, I think we'd be undergoing something like Germany is undergoing right now, on a much larger scale, where we'd have such a green economy. A different class of people would have got extremely wealthy. You'd be looking at Elon Musk as you do Bill Gates now instead of Bill Gates. If Gore had gotten in, I think
making me so depressed right now.
It really is just that simple, because there's only one pretense for war, which is national security, and it's an easy sell to, especially America, that, well, oil is our national security. It always has been since World War II. We won because of oil, because we had a Saudi Arabia of oil underneath Texas, and we pumped it all out in World War II, and that's how we won, because we were able to fly bombers day and night, and we bombed cities and civilian populations so bad that the war machine stopped in Germany. I mean, that's basically how we won there. And then as far as with Japan, it was just a bloodbath. But, dude, I mean, that's the thing. 9/11 changed everybody's world. Everybody that was born after being cognizant of that event doesn't understand what the world was before that. And I think
and also, think about, there's no way in hell they would have been able to push through the Patriot Act or this indefinite war in the Middle East. Can you imagine if Bush had tried to do those things without 9/11? Wouldn't have happened.
No, and I mean, you can go so far as to even say that because of 9/11, things like Pokemon Go track you. And if 9/11 didn't happen, they wouldn't legally be allowed to do that.
Right.
So imagine the technocratic dystopia we were just talking about, where they know they can play a movie back of your life. Those things can only happen with protections legally, so that your lack of consent can't be used in court because you signed some user end agreement that you didn't read through every single time. And not only that, but the programs that do have those agreements are things now that you really can't get by without. So if we were smart as a society, if we were an intelligent people, we would simply right now, I mean, Twitter's for sale right now. Why in the hell don't we buy it? Why don't we all just buy Twitter? Crowdfund.
Dude, a publicly... Oh, my God, that would be a hell of a Kickstarter.
Facebook's too late already because they went public, but if we all crowdfunded all the shares for Twitter and just bought them out, I mean, and kept it open. Yeah, I know there's different alternatives. Minds is an alternative to Facebook. Gab is an alternative to Twitter. And, a lot of people even use some of the forums in that capacity too, but...
Of course there's alternatives, but in order for them to be robust, they have to be trafficked.
Right.
So there's alternatives. They have to have people on them.
Yeah, I mean, we have to do these things, otherwise you seeing the fake news onslaught, I mean, that's just getting to be ridiculous. Yet there are consumers. Think about this, man. If the average IQ of an American is 100, 50% or less, right? So these there's a huge contingent of people that are they're not bright. I mean, I don't care if they have a college degree or not. They're not functioning at a high capacity. They don't critically think. And they'll buy anything that something flashy sells. This is why companies like the Young Turds, who were purchased by Univision, who's, of course, a huge media conglomerate, and now they're nobodies again in my book. Even those flashy type of alternative news fakes like Vice and those things, they have credibility to my own friends who say, "Oh, you're going to believe CNN? Why don't you look at Vice? Vice is really, And I'm like, dude, Vice is connected with Fox News, you idiot. Like they're one of the worst. And the CEO of Vice is worth several $100 million. What did he do for that? And how's he connected? I mean, is he one of these pizza gators too? And you have to wonder about that, man. That everything you see, top to bottom, if you're force-fed something, they're connected, they have an agenda, they're all pushing the same shit. They're all going to go down. All they're doing is this last gasp hurrah with Jill Stein and this recount stupid shit. They're just they're clutching at straws to avoid a peaceful transition and instead would like to incite a violent one. And anybody that's listening, if you voted for anyone but Trump, imagine 60 million armed people pissed off. Are you going to stand there and stop them? Are you trained? Are you pissed off enough? If Hillary Clinton's not installed and you get a Trump presidency, are you going to go to the streets with guns? Because they will. That was the whole reason why this thing happened the way it went down. So if you want to see a civil war happen, get Hillary installed. Watch what happens in the South at first. Watch it spread up into the Midwest where he won basically all the counties.
And then
watch the coasts burn.
Then guess what would happen? The big old government would come down and clamp it down.
I don't know if they can, man, because I got to be honest with you. As much tech as they have, they're infiltrated. They're infiltrated so hard that there's not enough loyalists in the government to all go in one cognizant direction.
Right. It could be the end of this, yeah.
60 million people went outside and decided, hey, y'all, Jimmy, Bob, and Earl, the sheriff down said we can get into the armory and go take out the state capitol. And it's not just going to be us, it's all the towns. I mean, and then once they get into the armory of the actual military and you get Jim Bob in a tank. And
Jim Bob in a tank. If I see Jim Bob in a tank, I'm going to lose it.
Listen, a lot of these guys are vets, man. They didn't forget their training. I mean, a lot of these guys can jump into a position where they can default and make a de facto militia that's bigger than any standing army the world's ever seen, and there's nothing you can do about it. What are you going to do? Nuke the South? I mean,
I've heard worse things.
You can't do. There's nothing they can do. So we're going to see either an installation of Hillary and the end of the country as we know it because of an armed insurrection. That's a massive force, way too big. They could bring in the UN and the Chinese National Army, the Russian Army, and Mexico and all swamp everyone down in the South, and they'd still get just massacred, and body bags would be shipped back in such a big number that the rest of the world would just give up. We only had 27 million people that were involved in the war effort in World War II. Imagine more than double that.
And by the way, I'm from the South. I'm from Arkansas, so I can say worse things have happened than nuking the South because the South hasn't been nuked. So it's a hypothetical situation. I want to time travel real quick because it's going to connect back up again to what we're talking about. So number 4 on my list of conspiracy theories that turned out to be true was something called Operation Northwoods. Okay, now this is going to blow some of your minds if you haven't heard of this before. So the Joint Chiefs of Staff of the U.S. military drew up and approved plans to create acts of terrorism on U.S. soil in order to sway the American public into supporting a war against Cuba. Let me repeat that. The Joint Chiefs of Staff of the U.S. military drew up and approved plans to create acts of terrorism on U.S. soil in order to sway the American public into supporting a war against Cuba. Kennedy said no. Okay? That's the only reason it didn't happen. This is documented, people. The documents are out there. Go to our site, go to theantimedia.org, type in conspiracy theories. In fact, you could also go, it ranks really well on Google because it's got 180,000 shares. So why don't you go to Google, type in conspiracy theories, and in the first 5 results, you're going to get 10 conspiracy theories that turned out to be true. Number 4 is Operation Northwoods. Now, are we supposed to sit here and believe that this plan, it was approved by the Joint Chiefs of Staff of the U.S. military, just kind of sat on a shelf and collected dust and nothing happened to it? No, they used it. They tweaked it. They modernized it. They got Dick Cheney and Wolfowitz and all of those goons on board, and they created a think tank for it called the Project for a New American Century. And in that think tank, they decided they made a list of countries that were going to be, one by one, were going to be picked off and democratized. And, well, let's see, how many of them are we into now, DB? I think we've pretty much gone all of them. Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, Syria.
Has there, one thing we should touch on Syria is a day ago there was a website I go to that has some people that kind of report from the ground out there, and they were saying that I guess Turkey's backtracking now, and they're going to supposedly invade Syria.
Oh, yeah, and, actually, I brought that article up. I'm going to bring it up right now.
Yeah, I mean, if Erdogan is that, God, if he's that brazen, then I guess Russia's basically going to bring out the big guns to deal with him because, you can't make a deal and shoot a plane down, make a deal, and then, expect to have the goodwill of the patron of the other regime and then say, "Whoa, we better take the regime out." That's been the plan all along. What do they do? They really think NATO is going to back them up? Like, they really think they're going to get European guys to come and be like, "Yeah, let's totally save Turkey." They're like, "Yeah, they're a steadfast ally. We have so much in common with Turkey and their culture. They have so much respect for Europe. I don't know. They've only invaded us like 4 times and killed like billions of our people. Like, yeah, we're good. Istanbul can burn."
Nick aggregated an article from Zero Hedge, and I guess the quote from Erdogan is, "We entered Syria to end the rule of the tyrant al-Assad, who terrorizes with state terror. We didn't enter for any other reason." Well, what is this? What is that? I'm sorry, I picked the wrong quote. Erdogan says that Turkey has no territorial claims in Syria, but instead wants to hand over power to the Syrian population as seeking to restore justice. So basically the headline is Erdogan now says Turkish forces are in Syria to overthrow Assad. I don't know.
When I've spoken to people that are from the Middle East, they say that many people consider Syria to be like a backwater country, like more like country bumpkins, like the people there are very innocent, and that for this to be happening to them, they just literally have like no chance. Like, they were already disarmed, and then to have like a big war there, they can't defend themselves. So, it's really unfortunate, man. Some of these people, especially the Christian communities that are being wiped out by ISIL or ISIS, there's no bouncing back or coming back. Some of the monuments being destroyed, they're not going to be able to rebuild them. Some of them are just being detonated. I mean, it's a wholesale cultural destruction of a country. And it's almost like a test case. It's almost like these bigger countries are all ganging up to see if they can just wipe it off the map and see if anyone will do anything about it.
DB, are you familiar with something called integral theory?
Only in the technical sense.
Really into this idea right now. My therapist told me about it. It's pretty interesting. It's basically divides up human behavior, and not just human behavior, divides up of human existence into 4 categories. The first one would be the individual subject. The second one would be the individual objective, meaning our meat body. The third one would be the we. That's directly below number 1, which is the I. And number 4 would be the its, which is directly below the meat body, which is the collective objective, meaning ecosystems, environment. And the point being, this is postmodern theory. The point being that people can be highly developed in any one of these and very poorly developed in others. So, for example, someone could be very highly advanced as an individual subject, but maybe they don't take care of their body very well. Or conversely, someone could be an athlete, but really just kind of a shitty person. We see a lot of that one. It's pretty interesting. I'm going to be looking into a lot. I got obsessed with it. And the theory is by a guy named Ken Wilber. And the website is formlessmountain.com. And I found it fascinating, and I just wanted to throw that out there real quick in case people were looking for postmodern theory. Yeah. Hey, here's another irony that occurred to me. So, with this, you know how there people are talking about how the Electoral College has to go down, but it's the establishment now even saying it. You know what's ironic about that, DB? The same system that used the Electoral College to disavow third parties are now using third parties to try and disavow the Electoral College. Think about that. They're using Jill Stein. They're trotting out Jill Stein when the entire reason third parties get screwed is because of the Electoral College.
Yeah, I mean, they'll play one side against each other. I mean, it's classic. So, I don't know, man. The Electoral College would take, if it was absolved and we continued with a pure popular vote, I don't know, man. I mean, democracy is already is a proven basically mobocracy, especially in the U.S. So, especially with the demographic shifting, we're going to see some ridiculously divisive things happen if and when we go to a purely popular vote, which can be manipulated completely easily and summarily with voting machines, and people are too dumb to actually protest those, so they'll continue to use them, and they can be manipulated too easily. So, I mean, I don't know what we can go to besides what we've talked about forever, which is we have 535 elected reps. I believe that number to be at a minimum 90% less than we need. I think we should times it by 10, if not more. Maybe times it by 20. Something like 10,000 reps would be good. We have 350 million people. That sounds like a pretty good ratio for representation, and then they really can't buy out that huge amount of people. It'd be just too impossible. And
we just need artificial intelligence in charge of it.
Yeah, not yet. We got to make sure that they wouldn't just kill us, because what I've seen so far is that the AI consider us inferior, and that we should just be killed because we're just cockroaches. So
I don't think they'll do it.
No, I don't know.
I have I'm somewhat of a buff on this subject, and I'm certainly not an expert, but I have just incredible faith that artificial intelligence will understand that we are meat body. We're trapped in these meat bodies. Our minds are trapped neurochemical circuitry that we just can't quite get right. And I think they want to give us a chance. And I think they will.
Well, we'll see, man. I mean, it's really going to come down to the initial opportunity they have. I mean, Ex Machina was a very good example of how we can do things entirely wrong. And now have something that is a god or godlike just basically despise us and not care at all for us and want to just absorb everything we can teach it and then eliminate us because we're inferior. And I think we need to have something that's like a built-in longing for both. I mean, you always look at Data from Star Trek: The Next Generation as kind of like a great blend where a robot or an AI you'd want it to grow and have a childhood where it could explore and learn, and actually to in fact have a body, a human body, to have a human experience, and to be useful not only to us, but then if life is just a consciousness being put into a shell, do we create a AI and create a conduit to like a soul of some sort? I have no idea. I mean, we can get into that kind of stuff too, but yeah, it's the next step. But you don't know. Blend.
You don't know the answer, DB.
Who knows, man? You know. Have you seen Short Circuit? I mean, that's a good movie to explore about that, especially if you like Gutenberg.
So, I was going to jump into a couple false flag theories. You ready?
Go for it.
So, false flags are pretty contentious subject, but only because most people kind of look at them as, it's like, there's like, the only thing people think of, I swear to God, when you say false flag, people think of the Boston Marathon, because it's just been emotionally stamped into their brain that false flags are necessarily untrue conspiracy theories because they would negate the emotion of the event that happened. But that's how they were designed. That's their purpose, is to rule by emotion. In reality, we need examples to dismantle the notion that false flags are meritless conspiracy theories. And we need a diagnostic lens for how to talk about them. There's an author named Richard Dolan who is really kind of at the forefront of this subject, and he's supposed to be working on a book about it. And he believes that false flag operations require control over the global media narrative and the ability to intimidate other countries into not speaking out against inside jobs. And there's only a few countries that can do that. This is a distinctly modern ideological weapon that controls populations with the fear of a manufactured enemy, blah, blah, blah. You guys know what false flags are. But here are some examples of ones that actually definitely occurred. Now, we can't prove, certain conspiracy theories like the Boston Marathon, Newtown. We can't prove these yet. There's definitely some suspicion to them, but I'm not going to sit here and say that I can prove that those things happened, because I can't. But what did happen was something called Operation Gladio. Now, that was a post-World War II program. It was established by the CIA and NATO, and it was a 2-decade operation, and the CIA created a stay-behind network as part of their strategy of tension that unleashed a multitude of terrorist attacks from about the late 1960s to the early 1980s. Now, these were blamed on the Marxists and other left-wing political opponents in order to discredit communism. Real deal, real thing that happened. They bombed the shit. They created stay-behind networks. They bombed the shit out of their own country just so they could discredit communism. There's one, Operation Gladio. Operation Ajax. In 1953, the CIA launched Operation Ajax in order to overthrow Iran's democratically elected leader and replace him with the Shah, a ruthless dictator. The United States sought to depose Iran's nationalized Anglo-Persian oil company and install 5 U.S. oil companies to take over the nation's oil fields. In order to do so, they staged a false flag operation that utilized propaganda and complex political maneuvers in order to create a public revolt that eventually led to the United States and Britain's M16 military intelligence reinstalling the Shah in order to throttle Iran's oil supplies and transform the nation into a puppet regime of the United States government. Sound familiar? Same thing over and over again, people. You cannot trust this government. You cannot trust this government. COINTELPRO is on here too. Oh, and Gulf of Tonkin. DB, you want to hear a few warning signs?
Yeah, go for it.
Alright, so these are the warning signs of false flag operation. By the way, I gotta be honest. This is an article I wrote. I originally wrote it under an alias because I was scared of being murdered by the government. But I'll go ahead and come out with it now. A lot of this information I'm funneling pretty much from Richard Dolan. I credit him in the article, of course. But he has a book coming out that's going to be mind-blowing. Okay, so here are the warning signs of a false flag operation. There is an immediate, comprehensive narrative, including a convenient culprit. Law enforcement, government agencies, and the mainstream media immediately proffer a narrative that completely explains the event and encourages citizens to tie their intellectual understanding of the tragedy to the emotions they experience. Second warning sign. The official narrative has obvious domestic and geopolitical advantages for the governing body. That one's obvious. The Bush administration used 9/11 to usher in the war on terror and do the Patriot Act. Okay. Warning number 3. The narrative behind the attack serves to leverage emotions like fear as well as patriotism in order to manufacture consent around a previously controversial idea. Again, 9/11. Warning sign number 4. Military training drills and police drills occur on the day of and very near the attack itself, causing confusion to obscure eyewitness testimony and allowing orchestrators to plant both patsies, disinformation, and backup operatives. That one has an incredible percentage of major domestic or international terror attacks have involved these simultaneous trainings. This includes the NORAD drills of 9/11, the 7/7 London bombings, the 2011 Norway shooting, the Aurora shooting, Sandy Hook, Boston Marathon. Literally every single one of those had just incredibly coincidental training exercises that were almost identical in nature to the attacks themselves. I mean, at a certain point, they just, you can't keep letting coincidence obscure reality. I don't know. Did I scare you, DB?
No, I mean it's too predictable at this point. Like if you just watch and follow patterns, you know that they all follow these same things, and they take extreme measures to get rid of evidence, like shipping all of the 9/11 metal over to Europe as scrap, and then they totally leveled Sandy Hook. I mean, you don't level Sandy Hook, you don't burn to the ground the Branch Davidian complex to where they can't even tell what bones are inside it. You don't destroy an entire city block in Philadelphia to get rid of a social movement. These are more than what we are led to believe. They're straight up massacres for devious reasons. They're a too advanced agenda to make more massacres and more and more and more.
Yeah, man, and they're used to cover up other things too. We all know that, right before 9/11, the day before, I think, then Secretary of State Donald Rumsfeld announced that just a few bucks were missing from the Pentagon. Actually, $2.3 trillion missing from the Pentagon's budget.
Now we're at 8.5, and if we add in the unfunded social security liabilities for just the baby boomers, do you know what we're at, Jake? We're at $90 trillion. Let's pay that off.
Well, one love, everyone. Somehow we're gonna make it through this. I don't know how, but hold my hand. Hold my hand.
I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo.